Welcome to Fox 32 Chicago. I'm Alexandra Bush here with Avi Loeb, one of our favorite guests of the show. We love having you on. We've gotten so many viewer questions since you started joining us and talking about 3i Atlas. We wanted to do a live stream specifically answering questions from our viewers. So if you are watching right now, feel free to put your question in the comments and we might be able to get Avi to answer it live. We're going to start off with a question based off our last conversation with you, which is right after NASA releasing the images of 3i Atlas. A lot of people commenting, saying that they were disappointed with the quality. They wanted to get your reaction if you were also surprised by the quality of the images.
Yeah, so this was a press conference with a purpose of public outreach, and I think they missed two important points. First of all, when you tell the public that there is an interesting object, sufficiently interesting for NASA officials to discuss it, you want to focus on the mysteries. Why this object requires more data, why is it puzzling, why is it interesting, and how much more we can learn out of it. Instead, what they focused on is what we think we already know about it, that it's a comet of a familiar type, nothing really unusual, it just came from a different environment. And so they tried to bring down the expectations about anything unusual being uncovered in the scientific process of learning about it. And the truth is that there are lots of anomalies, a number of problems, puzzles, mysteries that we don't understand, and that's actually what the public cares about. So when communicating to the public, you shouldn't downgrade the mystery, rather than you should emphasize it and say we need as much data as possible. Here is the data we have, and here are the big questions that we can address with future data, much better quality. They didn't do that. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two was to actually have the press conference, because if you look at the data, it didn't provide any significant new information. We got some blurry images. In fact, the best image was from the HiRISE camera on board the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was taken on October 2nd. And they were holding it during the government shutdown for 45 days. And so they built up expectation by having a press conference about it, and there wasn't much in it. The only tidbit that I got out of this blurry image, which was degraded by jitter in the camera apparently, and the motion of the object, the only information was that the fuzz around the object appears to be elongated in the direction of motion, not in the direction of the sun, as we expect from pockets of ice evaporated when they're facing the sun, and then the gas and dust coming from them being pushed away from the sun. So that would have given preference to the axis connecting 3i Atlas with the sun. Instead, what we see is that there is a plume of a glow around the object extended perpendicular to that direction, along the direction of motion. This was the first image we have where the direction of motion is not aligned with the direction to the sun. Because in the past it was approaching us and the sun, but near Mars it was moving sideways. And so that's the only tidbit, that there seemed to be something preceding the object, and that's difficult to understand. Why would there be a plume of gas and or some fragments out of the object preceding it, ahead of it? Why would that be the case? And they didn't touch on that. Again, they tried to downgrade any mysteries about the object. And other than that, the rest of the images were even worse. So I looked into the data of the HiRISE image actually today with my colleague, and we looked at it quantitatively. We didn't get anything out of it. There is no information. So why build up expectations? If you have an image that is degraded, if you have all these fuzzy images, and the best you can say is that there is some hydrogen around 3i Atlas, you don't hold a press conference for that. You just let the data be in a repository where scientists can look into it and do whatever they want with it. So that's the second mistake, where they built up expectation and then delivered nothing significant, and pretended that, they are educating the public by telling the public something, but what they told us is nothing new. And that is not the way to build trust. And moreover, they put only administrators, officials in that press conference. What you want to have is researchers that are doing research, conducting analysis of data about 3i Atlas. And of course, there are such scientists, those that analyze, for example, the Hubble image, those that analyze the Webb telescope image. If they were there, it would have been interesting to listen to them because they would talk about substance, about some details. Instead, you see officials talking in general terms and not really educating us much.
Off of that, someone with the screen name Second Sight said, at the NASA conference, it was said that there are no techno-signatures. Do the 12 anomalies we see in Atlas demonstrate any?
No, so the point of the matter is you cannot find the technological signatures unless you are seeking them, okay? So if your mindset is that it's a rock, you are not really searching for any signatures, and then you will not find anything. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So just to give you a counterexample, I found that the wow signal in 1977 came from within 9 degrees of the arrival direction of 3i Atlas. The following day, after I realized that, I contacted people responsible for radio observatories and said, you should look at this object in the radio. And as a result of that, a few days ago, there was a report from Meerkat, a radio observatory in South Africa, that basically concluded by looking at frequencies between 0.9 to 1.6 gigahertz. These are frequencies where cell phones operate. They looked at the object on the 5th of November, one day, and they didn't see any transmission coming from the object. They found some 23,000 signals, but they say all of them are probably human-made on Earth. And so they put an upper limit on any transmission in this band of frequencies on November 5th at the level of a cell phone transmission. So there was less power on that date in those band of frequencies. But that's an interesting limit. That's an example for putting a limit on a technosignature. That's not what the NASA official was talking about. Their point of view is, unless something immediately shows up as technological, for example, maneuvers in ways that we haven't seen before, or just strikes us in the face without us seeking it, unless that happens, we would say there is no technological signature. But that's not the right approach. For example, with the Webb telescope, in the coming weeks, we can search for heat coming out of 3i Atlas that cannot be accounted for by the illumination from the sun, and maybe is related to an engine. That would be really interesting to look for. So you need to have it in mind. You need to search for technological signatures in order to find them.
Yeah, off of that, some people, multiple people have been asking for an update on the Loeb scale. I know last time you said the 3i Atlas was set at 4 out of 10. Where are we at right now?
So I prefer not to announce any update to my ranking, which is old, a few months old, because in the coming weeks we'll have a flood of data. So it would be foolish of me to update it now. I would wait until we get to the middle of December, closer to the holidays, and then when we have access to much more data, I will be able to either rank it lower or higher on the Loeb scale. So it should be exciting. It's only a few weeks away, and that's the way, it's like the work of a detective. Let's collect more evidence and then decide if it's closer to being anomalous as a technological object, or maybe it would look just like an iceberg.
Yeah, someone with the screen name @Brubaker asked, you mentioned that 3i Atlas can be closer to Earth in mid-December, around the holidays, also around the Earth solstice. This user wants to know if you believe the timing of the solstice and the proximity of 3i Atlas hold any significance.
I haven't thought about that. The one thing I thought about is, it looks like it doesn't change its course significantly. There was some non-gravitational acceleration measured. There were actually new papers about it in recent days. But it's not significant. It doesn't look like it's maneuvering towards any particular planet beyond the force of gravity dictating its trajectory, and that's understandable. Even if it's a spacecraft, it's very massive, a very massive object. It would make more sense for it to release mini probes that would go towards the planets. And the fundamental question is, are there objects leaving this big object? Are there smaller objects coming out of it? And there were some hints of jets pointing in different directions, some perpendicular to the object sun axis. And so if we find such smaller objects coming off it, either as they come off it right now or later in future months, if we find new objects near the Earth or near Mars. I actually asked the NASA to look at their data from rovers, from orbiters around Mars, to see if there are any new objects, any new satellites appearing. That would obviously be a technological signature, because a natural iceberg would only break into fragments of ice, and they will not prefer to arrive close to Earth or Mars. So let's continue to monitor the sky around Earth, around Mars, maybe Jupiter. And if there is something, that would be definitely intriguing and very exciting.
All right, I know this just came out, but at the Friar Eli is asking if you've watched The Age of Disclosure, and what did you think?
Well, I know everything that was discussed in that documentary, because I spoke with the people featured there quite a bit in recent years, and in part that inspired the Galileo project that I'm leading. So there are definitely a lot of claims from military personnel, from intelligence agencies. These are serious people that are, responsible for the national security arena, and they are not easily swayed to claim things that are incorrect or not real. And they say that there are objects we don't fully understand. Now, the fundamental question is, does the government have at its possession, or the possession of corporations that it was in contact with, do they have materials from crash sites along with potential biological pilots that may have been there? Because there are some people who claim that, and I spoke with them. Now, I haven't seen any evidence to that, and as a scientist, I only respond to evidence. I don't respond to stories that people tell me, but these stories are very intriguing. And if the government does have access to such information, I think they should share it with scientists like myself, because my day job is what lies outside the solar system. The day job of people in the Pentagon or the intelligence agencies, the CIA, that their job is national security. It's limited to planet Earth. So anything that lies beyond Earth, let's say beyond the solar system, they should share it, any such information, with scientists like myself. And I will be delighted to help them with it if they have it. I have no access to it, but those people that are interviewed in the documentary claim that they had access to such information and it exists.
So do you plan on watching it?
Yeah, I'll watch it, but I don't expect to learn anything new from it, because the classified information will not be featured there. And that's where the meat lies. And of course, it would be nice to have disclosure one way or another if the current administration, for example, will come forward with an initiative to share data. I mean, for example, things that were collected 50 years ago have no relevance to national security today. If there were any gadgets developed by adversarial nations, they're obsolete by now if they are 50 years old. So any unusual data from 50 years ago can certainly be released without any concerns about national security.
Off of that, this next question is from a friend of mine asking about how artificial intelligence may be able to help with space research in the future. Do scientists use AI already? Do you feel like they'll be using it more, and how?
Yeah, so the most important role that AI can play would be to put it on spacecraft, on missions that we send to space. So far, AI was never loaded on a spacecraft. And the reason it's so valuable is that if we are able to do that, then we can allow the spacecraft to have its own brain. We don't need to send a human. And that's particularly important in missions that take a long time. So if you send, for example, an interstellar spacecraft, a spacecraft to interstellar space, then the journey takes a long time. It just takes tens of thousands of years to exit from the solar system, from the Oort cloud. And humans are not suited for such long journeys. And moreover, when the spacecraft reaches a destination of interest, let's say in 1,000,000 years from now, first of all, it will not get bored on the way. The equipment will still be there. But once it gets there, it will need to make decisions quickly, and it cannot get guidance from the sender. It just takes light too long to traverse these distances. And so what you want is an intelligent probe that is capable of making its own decisions and accomplishing its goals. And for that you need AI. So far we haven't launched AI to space, but once we do, we will get autonomous spacecraft. Like for now, whenever we send something to Mars or the Moon or any other planet, there are engineers in the Jet Propulsion Lab that are controlling these devices. I call that helicopter parenting. And in fact, there was a helicopter sent to Mars, and it was parented by those JPL engineers. And so we can give up on the concept of helicopter parenting, where our engineers on Earth will not need to be responsible for the actions of the spacecraft we send, and then they would be much more efficient. For example, we can send a swarm of small gadgets that think about what to do under different circumstances, and they navigate to many different locations at once instead of sending one big mission that we monitor from Earth. And we will accomplish much more in space this way.
All right, we've got another question from @Miss She is asking, if humanity were to make first contact with extraterrestrial species and you were allowed to ask one question, what would it be?
What happened before the Big Bang? And let me explain why. First of all, it's our cosmic roots. Where did we come from? You know, I can trace my roots back to my mother and so forth throughout the history of Earth. But if you ask where did the Earth come from, it's from a cloud of gas that made the sun. Where did that come from? From the reservoir of gas in the Milky Way galaxy. Where did the Milky Way galaxy come from? It's from the cosmic gas that filled up the universe in the vicinity of the Milky Way. It condensed to make the Milky Way. Why did the Milky Way form? Because there was some overdensity. There was a concentration of mass in the region of the Milky Way created early on in the universe. And then you end up in the Big Bang as the initial conditions of the current universe. And you ask, where did that come from? Okay, so that is the fundamental question about our cosmic roots. And maybe there was something before the Big Bang. And the reason we can't figure it out is because the density of matter and radiation diverge. They become infinite as we approach the Big Bang, and Einstein's theory of gravity breaks down. And we know what's the remedy. The remedy is to unify it with quantum mechanics. But we don't have a predictive theory that marries quantum mechanics and Einstein's gravity. We don't have a reliable theory that makes predictions. I mean, there were people working for 50 years on string theory, but if you ask them, can you forecast what really happened before the Big Bang? They would say, no, we have no clue. And so unfortunately, we can't really tell the answer to this question. And hopefully, an alien scientist would have a better understanding of nature that combines quantum mechanics and gravity and knows the answers to what happened before the Big Bang. So the benefit from that is, first, we will know our cosmic roots. Second, we will have a better grasp of quantum gravity that we don't have right now. And third, as soon as we know what started our universe, we will have a recipe for creating a baby universe. Because it's just like hearing that kids are born out of some act okay, you realize how kids are born. Otherwise, you see kids born and you don't know where they come from. But once you understand how they are made, then you can have kids in principle. Or, of course, you need to have the ingredients for that and appropriate conditions and so forth. Or you can make an analogy with a cake. If you know how to make a cake and you know the ingredients that you need, you know that you need an oven, then once you have the recipe, you can actually bake a cake as long as you have the oven. And so it will bring us, if you ask what will it, what status will we be elevated to, it's the status of being able to apply for the job of God. Because if there was a job advertisement, suppose we wanted to fill the job of God, and what would be the requirement, the job requirement? The first one would be you should be able to know how to create a universe, because the God, according to religions, God created this universe. So if we had an understanding of what were the circumstances under which you can create a baby universe in the laboratory, even if you didn't have a collider that creates those circumstances, you would have a recipe for creating a universe. And that is something that we previously assigned to the notion of God. So it would be an amazing type of knowledge. There is no bigger knowledge than that. If you can create a universe, you can create everything inside the universe as well. And so that would be amazing if that alien scientist would be able to tell us that.
User at Alex Milchek says, hearing that the next 3i Atlas NASCAR race will be in Daytona next month, is it true that Avi Loeb will be one of the test drivers?
Well, so a few weeks ago I was invited by Alex Maliki, a driver, a racer in the NASCAR car race in Bakersfield, California, because he decided to feature my image along with 3i Atlas on the hood of his car. And there I was a day after my Joe Rogan podcast, and Alex put me in his car and taught me how to drive it. I haven't, here you have the image, yes. So I haven't driven the car yet. And I asked my wife, and she said that she's not allowing me to take the risk. Obviously, there is a risk if you race a car. The other thing that was interesting in that visit is that I thought, why isn't it that some corporation decides to have a self-driving car competing in NASCAR? Because you can definitely design a car that is aided by AI, that is self-driving, that would beat all the drivers in the race. And the answer is because we enjoy seeing humans competing. I mean, obviously we can build a robot that will perform better than athletes. And we already have a computer that is winning chess games with all humans. So that doesn't take away the joy of witnessing humans play chess, because we enjoy challenging humans. And the same thing applies with respect to art. You might, this is Alex, by the way, and I was signing his T-shirt for him.
Very cool.
And so, art, in the day of, at this time, there is AI that is capable of producing art with qualities even better than many humans can. And so you might wonder, how come the value of art produced by humans is not degraded by that? And that's because art is a means of communication between humans, and we appreciate a human making art much more than an AI system making art. And we see it as a way of humans communicating with humans. So I don't think there is a risk to seeing self-driving cars competing in NASCAR, because we are not interested in that. I don't see a risk for artists in terms of AI taking away their creative powers and selling products at a much higher price than human artists. And I don't imagine chess players stopping to play chess just because a computer is doing better. And so that's my conclusion from that visit.
Very cool. We'll have to follow up with you. One more question. Someone from YouTube is asking, have we attempted to send a signal to 3i Atlas, or is it going too fast and is it too far away from us?
No, a signal can propagate at the speed of light, and 3i Atlas is moving at roughly 1 part in 5,000 of the speed of light. Sorry, 1 part in 50,000 in 50,000 of the speed of light. That means that the signal can easily reach 3i Atlas very quickly and without any problem. The question is, if it ends up being a rock, what's the point? Another question is, if it's not a rock, if it's technological, will we irritate whoever is on it by trying to do something to it or sending a powerful beam of light? The one thing I did calculate is that if the Earth was at its position 6 months earlier, then we would have been very close to 3i Atlas, just like Mars was, comparable to the distance between Mars and 3i Atlas when it came closest to Mars. And we would be there at the end of October. And I realized that we have radar systems that we could have used to map to get an image of 3i Atlas in 3 dimensions, because as it is rotating every 16 hours, we would have taken snapshots of it with a radar. At a distance of about 50 million kilometers, that's feasible given the large size of 3i Atlas. The signal would have been significant. However, it so happens that we were on the opposite side of the sun when it came closest to the sun, and as a result, we never get close enough to it to use radar systems. In terms of transmitting and waiting for an answer, that's an interesting question. Nobody, as far as I know, is planning to do that. And I mean, obviously, one can shoot a laser beam or some radar signal and wait for an answer, but I think it would be more informative for us to figure out remotely what it is by taking a lot of data of it with hundreds of ground-based telescopes and the Hubble and the Webb telescopes as well.
All right, I know I said one last question, but my boss actually just texted me, so I gotta get his question. And of course, he asked, could the WOW signal have been a message sent to 3i Atlas from its home planet?
That's possible. That may be why it was 9 degrees away from the arrival direction of 3i Atlas. Another possibility is that it was maneuvering. 3i Atlas started in a slightly different direction than we saw it, and so that's the mismatch. In 1977, 3i Atlas was at a distance of 3 light days, about 600 times the Earth-Sun separation. And back then it needed the power of a nuclear plant in order to transmit the WOW signal, about 1 gigawatt, I calculated. So that's feasible, that's completely reasonable, but it may well be that the WOW signal has nothing to do with 3i Atlas. We don't know. We just need to keep our eyes on the ball, and obviously there will be more interstellar objects coming our way that the Rubin Observatory will discover in the southern hemisphere. I really wish we had a copy of the Rubin Observatory in the northern hemisphere. If I had $1 billion, that would be my next priority, so that we cover the entire sky, both the north and the south, in terms of incoming interstellar objects, and potentially discovering a technological one, a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor. That would be amazing. It will change the future of humanity, and it will. I already had the podcast interview this morning with former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, and he said that by advocating for public attention to 3i Atlas, I was able to actually increase awareness to the importance of space exploration in recent months, and he was thanking me for that. And I do think that it's really important for us to put science at a higher priority, and for the scientists to attend to the interests of the public. That's the other part. What we saw in the NASA press conference is not the right approach. I think we should work together with the public by focusing our efforts on questions the public cares about, because the public funds science. And by the way, those are the most interesting questions. It's not as if we are sacrificing anything. I'm just saying the obvious. And secondly, being, starting from a standpoint of humility, the humility to learn. We don't know the answers. There are mysteries. Let's figure them out, rather than pretend that we are, experts that can tell the public the answer, the way that we see in press conferences like that one.
Avi, thank you so much. This is exactly why we appreciate you so much, being able to give time to our viewers, people online who just want to ask questions and learn more information and are obviously very excited about this topic. Thank you so much. We're going to continue to follow up with you and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much, and stay curious.